Hello, my name is Alexander Lucard, and I am an HMIS system administrator for Montgomery County. In today's training, we're going to talk about timeliness. Timeliness is an abstract concept that every single HMIS user needs to be aware of. It is super important. It is weighed heavily in the grading and ranking of your program, and yet it only appears in one small spot in all of HMIS. And most users don't know about it until they've been shown it. So what we're going to do today is talk about timeliness score, how it's generated, and why it's so important to you. We're going to be using William Hobbs as our test client today. And then we're also going to go over and look at the APR, which is where your timeliness score lives. In fact, let's do that now. Let's go look at an actual timeliness score. So this is your APR. This is the section of the APR that timeliness is in. It's section 6E, data quality timeliness. If you're not sure how to run the APR, please view or read the training on how to do the APR. The APR is the center of your universe in any program. Why? Because the APR is how you are ranked in SAGE, in NOFA, by your funder, by the county, by everything. If it is not in HMIS, it doesn't matter how good your physical records are or the records on your computer. If it is not in your service point HMIS, it does not count, right? And so timeliness score is only here in 6E in the APR. Every single person with an HMIS account should be running your canned APR once a month. Agency admins, program managers, program directors, contract monitors, you should all be looking at it more than once a month, and especially at this section if you're a program manager, director, or agency admin, because this will help you to see how efficiently your staff is using their time. I can't emphasize enough how important this is to help monitor your staff as well as how your program is doing. Now, HUD has a regulation where when a client enters your program or leaves your program, you have no more than 72 hours to put them or take them out of HMIS. So if I join your program today on 6/28/2021, that clock starts ticking and you have 3 days at the most to put me into HMIS. Same with if I leave HMIS. If I leave your program on July 1st, you have 72 hours until the end of July 4th to make me leave your program. Any time frame past those 72 hours, you will get dinged in your timeliness score. So let's take a look at it. There are 5 categories for timeliness score. 0 days. If you have a score of 0 days, that means that your timeliness score is 0 days, right? Seems pretty easy. And what that means is that you entered and or exited the client the same day they entered your program. So if you get me on 6/28, I come into your program and you do my project entry and or project exit on 6/28, you're going to have a timeliness score of 0 days. Again, timeliness score is the difference between their start or exit date and the date it is in real time. So another good example, let's say I join your program on 6/15. That's June 15th, but you don't get around to putting me into HMIS until today, which is 6/28. The system is going to look at the difference between the two. 6/15, the date that I joined your program, 6/28, the day you actually put me into HMIS, and it's going to give me that score of 13 days because there's a 13-day difference between 6/15 and 6/28. And again, you have 72 hours, so 0 days. That means that the client has been entered into service point or exited from service point the same day that they left the program in real life. 1 to 3 days means it took you 24 to 72 hours to make the change in HMIS from real time, right? And both of these are acceptable. 0 days is what you are striving for. 1 to 3 days is acceptable and will not get you dinged. Anything past that 72 hours, you are going to start to lose points in your ranking. 4 to 6 days, not good. Again, that means you're taking half a week to almost a week to put someone in HMIS or remove them from HMIS. That's not good. 7 to 10 days, that's really bad. Again, why would it take you more than 7 days to just do the client's entry or the client's exit from your program? And 11 plus days is just absolutely unacceptable. As we can see here, that's the majority of when it's being done. Why would it take over 2 weeks to do the project start date or the project exit date for a client? If I'm gone from your program, you shouldn't leave me in the system for 2 weeks. Same with if I'm entered in the program. You don't want to wait 2 weeks to put me in the system. This is going to affect everything from your occupancy, your capacity, any report that you run, especially those that are daily and weekly based, because that client is not going to show up for 2 weeks because it took you 2 weeks to put them in the system. And of course, it's going to nail your timeliness score. So what you guys need to be doing is making sure that as soon as you get a client, you put them into HMIS. Again, these 3 categories are not considered good. And if you are a program manager, agency administrator, contract monitor, you should be going right to this section, running this report for each of your programs and going, hey, what's going on? This is not good. Why is it taking us so long to move the bulk of our clients in and out of the program? We know when they leave. Why are we not spending the 13 to 15 seconds it takes to put the client in the system or take them out of our program? That should be an instant. And so what you need to be doing is figuring out why it's taking your staff so long to put them or take them out of HMIS, and then coming up with an action plan to improve your score, because this is not acceptable. The county is going to start taking you to task for this, and your agency admin and program managers should be doing the same. This is an accountability issue. This is an efficiency issue, and seeing anything this far out, especially if the majority of the clients are this far out, says that there is something really wrong with the program's performance. 6E is a really good red flag that there is something really wrong going on with your program. And this is basically the first sign of it. So, because if you're having a problem with timeliness, you're probably having something wrong with everything else in your program. So you have to get this fixed. Now, let's go back to Will, and we're going to talk entry exit. So if I enter a program, we're going to go to add entry exit. We're going to pick my provider. We're going to pick my program here. I'm going to do HSP singles because it's a single client. Type is HUD. And again, this is real time. Remember, the project start date versus real time. The difference between the 2 dates is going to determine your timeliness score. Today is June 28th in real life. It might not be when you're watching this video, but it is when I'm recording it. So if I get the client today and put them in HMIS, I'm going to have a project start date of 0 days. Why? Because today is 6/28, and I'm actually putting them in HMIS on 6/28. I hit save and continue. Perfect. I'm going to have a score of 0 days. Now, if it turns out that I just haven't put them in for whatever reason, we were using that 6/15 date. Whoops, I better get in here, put them in the system, right? That's going to be a difference of 13 days. The project start date was 6/15, but I didn't actually put him in until 6/28. That is a difference of 13 days. That's going to give me a timeless score of 13 days, which isn't good. And program managers, agency admins, contract monitors, it is completely within your right to go to that case manager and go, what the heck? Why did it take you 2 weeks to put this person in the system? Because there's not a good reason. To be blunt, there is never a good reason for it to take that long. You hit save and continue. And there we go. And now your timeliness score is generated. And there's nothing you can do to change it for the better. So for example, let's say I go back in, I keep hitting save and continue. I keep going in, I'm doing stuff with my entry. That score is not going to change. It's always going to be 6/15 to 6/28. So you can, with impunity, you can keep going back into your project start date. If, however, for whatever reason, you change the project start date, it's going to change your timeliness score again. It's going to recalculate. So if it turns out he actually came in on 6/14, I hit save and continue, it's going to recalculate. And it's going to give you an even worse score because you're changing that project start date. It's comparing it to the real date. And so there's no reason you really need to do that unless you actually made a typo. Now, one of the big reasons client or programs have an issue with their timeliness score is right here with the entry screen. okay? Because there's so many questions here in bold that you have to answer, and it won't let you save the work until you have all the answers. And so some programs are like, oh, I'm not going to put them into HMIS until I have all the answers. You know, maybe they left something on the intake and I don't want to have to go back, because you have to answer all these questions. And if you don't answer all these questions, it won't let you save. So I'm not going to bother. And that's understandable, because you're trying to be thorough. You're trying to be accurate. You're trying to get everything done in one fell swoop, right? Well, that actually hurts you. You don't need to have all these questions answered for your timeliness score. All you have to do is create that entry. So let me show you. Let's do one other thing. Ready? Let me give you a better example. Let's again go HSP charity. And what we're doing in this example is just for training. Let's hope this never actually happens in real life, but we're going to put them in for 2010. You don't actually want a timeliness score of 11 years or something bad will happen. We hit save and continue. As we can see, none of these questions are answered. And we're like, oh, look, let's say we try to save, right? Oh, you can't, because you have to answer all these questions. And you can't just fill out a single question like head of household, because if you try to save and exit, it's going to make you answer all these questions. You have to answer all these questions in order to save any of this information. So a lot of people wait until they have every single one of these questions and then just fill them out lickety split, right? You go all the way down, you finally got the answers. And so you don't actually generate your project start date until you have all the answers. And that's what kills a lot of people's timeliness score. So here's the trick, right? We're gonna go back. Change. See, it took 5 seconds to generate that 6/28/2010. You just go all the way down, hit exit. There, your timeliness score is done. Takes 5 seconds. You're going to get a score of 0 days if this was 2021. You don't have to worry about answering the questions because it's an all or none. You've generated your project start date. You're going to have your score. It's going to be permanent. And then you can at leisure, although you really want to make it pressing, get those answers in. So if you have a client that's stonewalling you on a particular question, that's okay. You've got the project start date in. All it is looking for is this screen right here. It doesn't care about the head of household, doesn't care about the HUD verifications, it doesn't care about date of birth, doesn't care about race, doesn't care about age, doesn't care about any of that. Timeliness score is just generated with this screen right here, and you're good. So if you have a client that isn't giving you all of the intake information, don't worry about it. Generate that project start date. You are done. It takes 5 seconds. Your timeliness score is locked in stone. You're going to get the best score you possibly can get, which is hopefully 0 days. And you're good. Right? Again, project start date, first real date. That's what's going to generate it. So just generate this screen right here. It takes 5 seconds. Hit save and continue. You don't have to worry about answering all these other questions. Just go to exit. Your score is done. And then you can just get those questions in when you can get those questions in, because some clients are notoriously more difficult than others. And that's how you generate your project start date timeliness score. Now let's talk about the exit date. It's very similar, right? Pencil. You do your exit date. So today is 6/28. If I leave on 6/28, that's fine. I'm going to have an exit score of 0 days. I'll just say program. We're going to give him a happy ending. Right? Let's save and continue. Now, when you exit a client, you have to check all these questions just to make sure that everything is correct. Right? You look through, you think everything looks good, you hit save and exit, you're done. And your timeliness score for an exit date is the date that they left versus real time. So in this case, we would generate a timeliness score of 0 days because it's 6/28 in real life, and it's the day that I exited the point. If I exited them on 6/15, again, I'd have an exit score of 13 days. You have 72 hours. Once that client leaves your program or enters that client, that clock is ticking, and you need to put in the project start date and the exit date or exit date. It's vitally important. Now, there's one big catch with the exit date. Much like we saw, there's something that holds a lot of programs back from getting a good start date score. There is one thing that keeps programs from having a good exit date. And that's anytime you go back into the exit date, anytime you go here, click on the pencil and hit save and continue, it will recalculate your score. Why? Because the client has exited from your program. You should not be touching this screen again. When you touch save and continue on the exit date, it's saying, hey, there's more work that you didn't do. Why didn't you do it? So we're going to say that you don't have a good timeliness score. We're going to recalculate it because you had to go back in after they left the program and fix something. Once you exit the client out, you should not be touching the exit date. But then what happens if you get an exit date error in the APR? Like there's an income error, for example, and you need to go fix it. How do you fix it without ruining your timeliness score? Well, there's one trick. And I learned this through trial and error, but there is a way to circumvent and fix your exit date errors without destroying your timeliness score. Because a lot of people only look at their exit date errors like once a quarter or, God forbid, once a year. And so you go back in, and then this timeliness score of 0 days, when you try to fix it around point in time, goes from 0 days to 6 months. And you don't want that. So how do you fix your exit date scores without ruining your timeliness? How do you fix those errors without ruining your timeliness? You don't click the pencil and hit save and continue. That generates a new timeliness score, always for the severe worse. So what you're going to do is you're going to create an interim. See, 9:54:49 a.m. We're going to create an interim for that exact date and time. We do update. Let's see, 9:54:55. Let's double check, make sure that's exactly right. 9:54:49. You have to be exact. Right? Update, save and continue. Now, I'm in an interim for the exact date and time to the second that the client left the program. I can fix my errors here and just go through everything and fix it. I can fix any of the exit errors here. Why? Because we've got an interim for the exact date and time. 9:54:49. And then the interim, 9:54:49. By going through the interim, we aren't recalculating the exit date because we aren't choosing save and continue on the exit date. Your timeliness score will remain intact of 0 days for the exit date, even if this is like January 2022, because we've got that interim, right? We've got that interim, we're good to go. The exact date and time of the exit, we're fixing all of our errors here, and it won't mess up our timeliness score through the exit date. We're kind of cheating, but it works, and it's going to preserve your score. And then you just delete the interim. And that's what you do to preserve your exit date score. Again, this is so important. I cannot stress how important your timeliness score is. That timeliness score in that 6E section of the APR can really, really hurt some programs. A lot of programs do not pay attention to that score. They aren't paying attention to the fact that their staff is taking weeks to put stuff and make corrections in HMIS. It's hurting their reports. It's hurting their ranking. It's hurting their tier. It's hurting their NOFA. It's hurting their SAGE. And you got to be paying attention to it. Case managers, you're going to be taken to task you're going to be asked, why is it taking you a week to get these clients in the program? You know you have 72 hours. Program managers and directors, you're going to be taking the task. Why are you letting your staff take forever to put things into HMIS? What is the reason for this? Agency admins, you're going to be held accountable. You know you're supposed to run the APR really, really regularly. Why is your timeliness score so bad? Contract monitors, you should be running the report and asking, why is your timeliness score so bad? This is so important. Not only is this something you are graded on by HUD, but this is something you can use as an internal metric to see how good your staff is doing. Because if it is taking 2 weeks for them just to put an entry in, what about those income changes? What about point in times? What about interims and annual assessments? This is a great benchmark to say, hey, how good, how efficient is our staff? And you really need to be holding. So I hope this training was helpful. I know it's a little brusque compared to the other trainings, but that's because so many programs miss this one. This is so vital, and just very few programs are paying attention to it. So hopefully after this training and the accompanying PowerPoint, you'll know how timeliness score works. You'll know to look for it in the APR, and you can start to set up an action plan to improve your program score. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to doing more trainings with you soon. Have a great day.